So, a stone marketing detective. Tell me where this idea came from because I am just like so intrigued.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so to back up half a step before that, I had a podcast a long time ago now. It was probably like
P.S. You
2016.
got this, right? Was that the name of it?
Yeah, PS, you got
Yeah.
this. And I did it with two other women, and it was great. It was fine. All good things. It was a pretty standard interview podcast. We rotated as hosts and then did a roundtable. And we did it for a season, however many, I think there was like 20 something episodes. And we just weren't seeing the ROI in any way that we wanted to see. And so we lovingly let it go. And then since then, I've always kind of wanted to do a podcast again, but I felt like I needed a different spin. I needed some kind of a
Mm.
hook, right? I didn't feel like I had anything unique enough to bring to an interview style podcast just to start one up. So I was waiting for that idea to hit. And then last year, midsummer-ish, I don't even remember why it happened, but I had this thought like I should put on a radio play. And for anybody who doesn't know me, my branding since like 2015 has been very noir, film noir detective agency is the brand. And so it actually made perfect sense to me in my little brain that I should do like a classic 1940s style radio
Yeah.
play.
I kind of like, I imagine it coming out of one of those like round top, like fireside chats, you
Yes,
know?
the
Or like,
ones that
what
were
is,
the
was it?
size of a big television that you had to turn
Yeah.
on next to the
Or
chair.
was it War of the Worlds? It was like Orson
Yes.
Welles. They did
Yes.
it as a radio show and people thought that the world, they like tuned in late and thought the world was actually being invaded by Martians, right? Like
Yes.
that vibe and feel to it. This old
That
timey.
vibe. Yeah. Yeah, like, doing your own sound effects with the coconuts on the on the table and that kind of thing. That's exactly what I was going for. So I sat down and I wrote the first episode, and it just flowed. It just came out of me like really easily. And so then I was like, "Oh, this might be a thing." But yeah, and so that's where it came from. I mean, we can talk a little bit more about how I decided to get it produced, but yeah, that's where the idea was just kind of like it came to me from playing around with the ideas of like 1940s noir detective agency branding and what I wanted to say or how I wanted to do a podcast. Like I needed to do something different for me.
Right. And as a writer, like you're probably always trying different styles and techniques and stuff. Did you have, I know you were a journalist, like do you have screenwriting experience too, or was that something new that you were exploring?
I do actually have screenwriting experience.
I
So,
thought so.
my degree is in film. From my
Mm.
BA is in moving image arts, and so part of that was screenwriting as well. And writing for radio is actually very a little bit different because with visual mediums you can rely on what they see, and so like you can have whole
Mm.
scenes in a movie where nobody talks, right? But writing for radio nobody can see anything, so you have to have it was really interesting because I realized some of the conceits of like the old radio, like the detective always has a sidekick or a plucky young girl who helps him out, right? And it's because he needs somebody to monologue to. Like if it's just the
Mm.
detective, then he's just talking to himself. So he needs somebody to ask, "What's that?" Or whatever, so he can describe what's going on, and different things like that. So it was an interesting process for sure.
Right, you've written novels too, so you kind of have
Yes,
this idea of how to have dialogue make sense, but in the novels you can write in description. So it doesn't have to be in
exactly.
exclusively dialogue. So it probably was very much like an innovative, creative project for you.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of my first drafts tend to be very for novels tend to be very dialogue heavy. So that part wasn't too hard for me, but yeah, figuring out like how do you set the stage? How do you describe what's going on? How do you describe an action scene with just a few oof and pows? It was a lot of
And then
fun.
once you had like, how many episodes did you have drafted before you were like, oh, this actually is a thing I want to do? Like, this has legs.
Yeah, well, actually, so before I got too far into it, what I did was I called up a friend of mine. His name is Joe Cuccinati, and he and I were best man and matron of honor at a wedding. That's how we met through our friends. And he is big in the radio and theater and voice acting world in Dallas, which is where I'm from. And so I was like, I have this wacky idea. Like, could we get on a call and just talk about this? And so he and I got on a call, and I was like, does this have legs? Like, how hard would it be to produce? And I knew he had done podcasts as well, more like roundtable style. He's very geeky. He's done several like movie review podcasts and things like that. But I also knew he produced a really fun web series, the name of which is going to escape me, about a comic book shop. I'll find it for you because it's really fun. But
Yeah, we'll put it
so
in
I
the show
knew
notes for sure.
I knew he had done like weird, wacky ideas like this. And so I was like, what do you think? Does it have legs? And he's like, I think it's great. And so that was when I was like, all right, this is a thing that's happening. Like, I kind of had to get an outside opinion. Like, how hard would this be to do?